Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I'd like to do is talk about some new things happening with watch movements. And so let's get started. One of the more interesting things, and I think on a very positive note, is a new movement company called Kinecy. And Kinecy owns 50% of itself and sold 50% to Tudor. And Tudor and Kinecy are building a big factory on land that's owned by Rolex, which makes it even more interesting. Of course, Rolex also owns Tudor. Now, a new twist in this, and one of the first movements I've seen that was made by Kinecy is called the Caliber 12.1, and it is used in the Chanel one. It's called J12, and the Chanel J12. All right, the Chanel J12 has gone through a number of different movements. It used ETA at one time, and and it kept hiding the name of the movement. But this one is a gorgeous-looking movement, I think. So it bodes well. Might also add that, remember, Chanel also owns 20% of FP's yarn. They make their own movements and everything else that they have. All right. Oh, by the way, too, the BO1 chronograph by Breitling is used by Tudor, and the MT516 chronometer is used in the B20 based movements by Breitling. So there's an exchange between the two. But it's hard to tell what is made by Breitling and what's not, because they have some kind of B designation for ETAs and Solides and everything else. So, all right, you got to be on your toes to buy watches these days. All right, now another group of movements that are not ETA that are used or coming or going that we might want to know about. One is Soprod, and Soprod is owned by the Festina Group, which owns Parallel movements, and so the movements in Parallel are Soprod. Another one that's sort of interesting is Unico. Unico movements. This one the reason it's interesting is that it's used in Hublot, but Hublot is owned by LVMH, in other words, by Louis Vuitton, but the Louis Vuitton group also owns Defy Labs, that Zenith's movement maker, plus La Fabrique du Temps, which makes movements for Louis Vuitton. So now they have another one called Unico, and I don't know whether that's going to be exclusive to Hublot or what it is. Another company, several other companies actually, have a similar arrangement. They have part of it is watches, and the other part is movements. For example, Beauvais has a company that makes their movements called Demier, and so there's Beauvais 1822, and then Demier something. I forgot what the number of it is. So that's not unusual, but it's sort of an interesting thing going on here. Finally, this group is Olergy Schild. Now, Schild is an old Swiss name, and so I thought, well, I'll find out something about it. What I came to, it looks like all of their manufacturing is being done in a factory in Vietnam. So there was a picture of this corrugated metal one and all of these people working on their watches. It's another interesting thing. So, I mean, if somebody has a Schild movement and say, oh yeah, this is an old Swiss company, but I don't know. All right, now another really interesting watch company is called Concepto, and Concepto, like some other watch companies we're going to take a look at, has sort of a notion of a modular idea. They have something called the Concepto Watch Factory, and so you have CWF is the name of the movements. This one is called the CWF 2000, which is modular. Now, it was ETA 7750 inspired. So it's always nice to see inspiration from somewhere. But they also make really a very interesting range of movements. One is the CWF 7100. That's a 2.5 hertz movement, which I happen to like. It's manual wind also. But they also have a tourbillon. This 1 watts there, the DWISS has running on a Concepto tourbillon. That's about a $10,000 watch, which for tourbillon is not bad. Now, La Chaux-de-Fonds, the town of La Chaux-de-Fonds, there was a company at one time called Jacquet SA, and as you probably know, is that Jean-Pierre Jacquet was the namesake for it. He founded it, got in a bunch of trouble, had to go to jail, and the people who were part owners in the company renamed it La Joux-Perret. Now, La Joux-Perret is now owned by Citizen, and the watches, or the watch movements that are coming out of there, I think some of them are being made actually in Japan in the Citizen group, so Citizen Watch Company. There's a Baume Mercier, which is, that's one of the movements that they use. Okay, by the way, too, it's sort of interesting. Valérien Jacquet, who is the head guy at Concepto, is the son of Jean-Pierre Jacquet. The Concepto is only 2.5 miles up the road from La Joux-Perret, which was originally Jacquet SA. Interesting stuff. By the way, too, the Concepto movements as an alternative to ETA seem to be picking up a wider range of kinds of watches that they're making, or the movements that they're making for watches. All right, now this next one is a new one to me. The company called Orage, they have a movement called the K1, and this particular one that I have a picture of there is the one they entered in the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève this year. It's called the Autark. Strange name. Now, the idea behind the K1 is that they'll have one base movement and then different configurations. And here you've got, let's see, you got 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 18 different configurations. Now, the reason for that is that for watch companies, they want to have a movement that they can use, but they want to have different models. Well, they can, if they get a K1, then they can fix it up in a lot of different ways, or have them supply it in a lot of different modules without having to spend a lot of money that it takes for development and machining and everything else. So this is not only does Concepto have that idea, but the Orage K1 does too. So this is another one we may see coming down the pike. There's sort of, you can't see it very well, but there's it shows how all of the parts for the K1 there. All right. Now, another one that's been around for a while, Vasseur manufactured Fleurier. Here's a movement company that Hermes owns 25% of it. Everything that is made for Parmigiani, all of the movements for Parmigiani are made by Val Fleurier. Not Val Fleurier, but Vasseur. There's a big difference there, by the way. Val Fleurier is a whole other story. Okay, so here again, what you have is that you have more than a single movement with different configurations. You have several movements, and each of those has multiple configurations. What you can see there, those little black circles, illustrations, are just part of the ones that Vasseur has. And so this is where their movements are so well done. They're very expensive too. These things are, start I think right around $1,000 and go up just for the movement. And you take a typical ETA, and maybe you're talking about $100. If you go off as an individual buy it, cost you more. But otherwise, it's very, very, very up there, both in terms of quality of the movement and the price of it. Now, another consideration of Chinese movements. The Chinese movements, they're usually, there's a lot of disparaging of Chinese movements because the Swiss have such a high reputation, really more than anything else. And one of the ones that's come out to become better known is called Siegel. And Siegel has a series of movements, and they have the ST caliber name. For example, this is Sterling Legacy 977, and it has a Siegel ST9G203. That watch sells for $124 for the whole thing. The other hand, the chronograph that Siegel has now, if you start looking at those movements carefully, you can see the finishing on them and the machining and everything else just really is just basic to make them work. I've worked with a lot of Siegel movements because in terms of watchmaking, or what I call pretentious watchmaking that I do, there's, if you break them, they don't cost as much. But I've been able to get those things working very well, and so who knows? And in time, they seem to be improving. There's a whole thing called the sort of Chinese watch factory that's not Siegel, but a whole series of these watch factories all over China, and there's some of them you can tell by the caliber name what they are, others you can't. I was looking at all have been for regulators. I had some idea that, well, gee, it'd be fun to have a regulator. And I was trying to find out that Siegel used to make a regulator. So I inquired about it, and I got an email back, and the guy said, we haven't had Siegel regulator movements for a long time now, but here we got one for you with $200, and that's for the whole watch, not just for the movement. So I think I got to see what that thing looks like. Now, another thing that I found was, and there are a lot of them now, I knew that Siegel made a tourbillon, but apparently some of these other watch factories have them too. And there's one I found was $435 for a tourbillon. Now, these tourbillons, they're way up there in price. And again, who can say, well, I tell you who can say, somebody who takes a good look at it, a watchmaker would know. But if it's a tourbillon, it works like a tourbillon, has all the functions of a tourbillon, then it is. So if these tend to increase in quality over time, and they do make the majority of the world's movements, not Switzerland, they make a lot of them. So this is sort of an interesting thing that's going to happen. Now, a lot of Swiss movement companies have Chinese parts that they use. And some of the Chinese parts, like that simply hunks of metal that you got to cut into a certain shape, finish them up, make them look better. They can save a lot of money, which means that they can have increased profits on these. Anyway, well, the last thing I want to talk about, I was, again, like I said, I've been looking at regulators, just for the heck of it. Regulators are those watches that have a different dial for every timekeeping element of it. So I found this outfit called Louis Arand. And so I went to look at it, and right on the front there, they had, on the one on the left, it said Solida SW200-1 with Dubois Dupraz complication 14072. Man, looking at that thing, I know right away what's in it. There's no doubt about it. Okay, it's got a Solida SW201, which I know a little about because I destroyed one in a watchmaking class. But it was a tough little thing. But just they tended to be a little too small for a beginner to work on, so didn't do much with it. Now, the other one, also by Louis Arand, is called the Regulator PRI for Power Reserve Indicator, and then it says ETA 7001. Now, this ETA 7001 was basically when they bought Pazoo, they changed it from the Pazoo 7001 to an ETA 7001. Now, they could have put Pazoo 7001, and that would have been, I mean, yeah, it's just like they put ETA Unitas or Valju on some of the other ones. But Louis Arand just, I mean, it's like, that's what it is. It's ETA 7001. It's a mechanical hand-wound movement that I've had before. It's relatively small. But then look what it says after that. It says ETA 7001 with Louis Arand in-house complication. Okay, now the complication is going to be the regulator, the way the hands, some gears had to be set so that the hands would go, instead of all in the center, they would go to two different places, plus the power reserve indicator. So now, this is not difficult. There's no reason every watch company can't do the same thing, just because you know what you're paying for. Now, if you figure, okay, $2,500 or about $3,000 for the other one, if that's worth it, fine. I mean, at least you know what you're paying for. If you say, wow, you know, that's a lot for that kind of watch or for that kind of movement. Yeah, but the problem that we all face is where they use some phony baloney name or phony baloney movement indicator. So companies like Louis Arand, I like them. Same with Steinhardt. A lot of people have a pejorative term for inexpensive watches, and it's stupid because they have no idea what the movement is. They don't know what the movement is in a sterling, but they'll give it some crappy, title. It's sort of nuts. The other day, we were deciding about whether or not to buy a new set of tires. It was about $1,000 for it. And this was a big decision we had to make. We hemmed and hawed over it. I realized, my God, that's we spend this much on a watch without batting an eye and think we got a cheap deal on a watch. So anyway, we do spend a lot of money, and we should know what's in the watches that we're spending money on. And Louis Arand should be a model. I mean, if I bought a Cartier with an ETA in it, and they said this has got an ETA 7750 or something like that, hey, that's fine. I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm paying for. If I want to pay a lot for it because it says Cartier and I like the style and so forth, fine. Point being is that the more we know as collectors, the better off we are. Well, listen, I know this is nothing new, but it's there are a lot of other movements now that we have to consider. So, as always, I'd really like to hear what your ideas and any comments that you have. And also, this is an invitation to subscribe if you'd like. And hey, there's Sunday, we'll have our collection review. I hope you like that. But we have the Grand Prix picks. And so if you'd like to win one of 3 watches, we're giving away 3 watches this time. So enter the Grand Prix picks. Hope to see you Sunday. Until then, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Outside, the Art and Science of Watch Collection.